Hi everybody, this is Laura, City Scrapper. Thank you so much for joining me on my channel. Today I have a layout that I made using the September My Creative Scrapbook limited edition kit. This month I've been working very hard to edit and voice over a number of videos that I filmed but never finished. So while I made this layout back in September, I am just getting this video completed, and I'm going to continue to try to get all of the videos that I haven't finished available for you on my channel this month. For the September kit, we got this gorgeous collection. It's a 49 in market collection called Art Options Viken or Viken. I'm not sure which one it is, but it's a gorgeous collection that has such a beautiful combination of cool colors. I started this layout with two photos that are on the smaller side. I usually have larger photos on my layouts. And then I used two of the frames that were in the kit. One's a large purple frame and the other is a tiny silver looking frame. I also used a number of floral embellishments from the kit. There were so many beautiful flowers and there were leaves, and so I decided to use a number of distress oxides to ink the edges, and I chose the color based on the primary color in the embellishment that I was inking. The purple distress oxide is called Villainous Purple. The blue color is Peacock Feathers, and then I have two greens. One is Mowed Lawn, and the other green is Rustic Wilderness. I have a number of sentiments and tabs as well, and I inked the edges of those too. Now I'm using a stencil from my stash. I'm using some Finnabair heavy white gesso and a makeup sponge, and I'm pressing the gesso through the stencil. I really like the idea of adding some white into the background. There are a lot of darker colors, and I just thought it would look nice to have some images of flowers in white on the background. One of my favorite go-to compositions for scrapbook pages is having the elements arranged on a diagonal across the page. I feel like I've used this arrangement so many times over the years, and yet the layouts come out very, very different because although there's some similarity with the composition, all of the papers and embellishments are different, so the layouts look very different. So I'm arranging the stenciling in a diagonal from the upper left-hand corner to the lower right-hand corner. And then I branched out a little bit and put a few flowers on the upper right-hand corner. I like the way the flowers on this stencil were very small. I think that's a nice contrast to the larger flowers that are on the pattern paper. I also like this stencil because it's not symmetrical, and I feel that by turning the stencil in different angles, you can get a lot of very different looks with the flowers so that they don't all look the same. Now I'm using some watered down white acrylic paint to splatter on the background, and I'm mainly splattering the paint on the areas where I have applied the gesso. Once those white splatters were dry, I went back in with the stencil and I added some more stenciling in the right top side of the layout. To balance that stenciling out, I also added a little bit of the gesso on the lower left-hand side. But a lot of this gets covered up because this is the area where I'm going to be placing my photo. I have my photo mounted in the frame, and now I'm mounting the frame on some white cardstock. I wanted to make a mat of white all around the photo because I wanted it to stand out from the background and contrast with those darker colors. I put some fun foam behind the photo. I wanted to pop it up just a little bit off of the background. Because the paper that I'm using in the background is very busy, I was thinking that it might look nice to put a border around the outside. I used a piece of purple cardstock from my stash that I thought went well with the colors in this collection, and I'm also using a piece of white cardstock, so there'll be a very thin purple mat and there'll be a slightly larger white mat behind that. I gutted the purple paper just in case I wanted to use that same color purple on the layout, although I don't end up doing that, but I always like to have that option. There have been quite a few times where I have not gutted a piece of paper and then needed a piece of paper that color, didn't have any more, and regretted not gutting it. So I've learned my lesson, and now even if I have no plans of using the paper, I will gut it anyway, and then if I don't use it on the layout, I just put it in with my scraps. I have a smaller photo in this silvery gray frame. I put some foam on the bottom and on the right side so that I can place it on top of the larger frame and it will sit correctly on the page. Now I have my embellishments, the leaf embellishments, and the flower embellishments. I'm going to start adding those to the page. You can see how I'm sticking to that diagonal pattern. I started a cluster in the upper left-hand corner and the lower right-hand corner, and then I'm also going to have another small cluster underneath the photo and off to the left, and I'll start building that in a little bit. The slightly larger photo is of my daughter Danielle and me, and the smaller photo is of some cool looking candles. We went to some kind of a fair where they had all kinds of vendors. They had some creepy stuff, they had some just really old stuff. There was quite a variety. I always remember that they had one vendor who was selling glass eyeballs. I don't remember buying too much there, but we had a really fun time. I'm always up for an outing with my family. It really doesn't matter where we go. We always have a good time. And I try to be grateful for every moment with my daughters. I know that before you know it, they will be grown up and moved out of the house. So I try to savor every moment with them. So in the lower left-hand corner, I'm placing some sentiments. One says this day, one says best ever, another one says happy thoughts. One is green, one is light purple, one is dark purple. I just love this color scheme. So I popped up all of those sentiments on some foam, and now I'm tucking a few more embellishments in. I wanted to add some flowers and some leaves to that cluster as well. That's not going to be a main cluster, but I wanted it to have some embellishing. I'm going to use the title Dreamer for this layout. This was one of the titles that was included in the kit, and I love pre-made titles. I'm really not great at thinking of my own titles, and I think that this title Dreamer could go with so many layouts, and I think it went along with these photos as well. I tried the title in a couple of different places, and I finally decided to put it right on top of the photo. I'm continuing to add to those clusters with a few additional embellishments. I add some smaller leaves around the outside of each of the clusters. And now I have a number of dragonflies that I'm going to add to the layout. I have their wings already popped up on some foam. I think that was because I was going to use them on a different layout and I ended up not using them. I had a little white spot on the upper right-hand corner of the frame, so I thought that I would cover that up with one of the dragonflies, but I don't end up leaving it there because I really don't like it in that spot. In the end, I didn't even cover up that white spot. I don't think that it's super noticeable. I'm finding homes for all of those dragonflies on the layout. There are some very tiny dragonflies, there's a larger one, there are some medium-sized dragonflies, but I like the idea of having them somewhat clustered together. Now that I'm happy with everything on the layout, I used some ATG adhesive and I attached all of those elements down to the page. I want to pop up the title, so I'm cutting out some very thin strips of fun foam and I'm putting them on the back of the title just to give it some dimension. Once I have all of the foam in place, I use my ATG gun and I add some adhesive to the back of the title. This has to be done very carefully because the ATG gun will pull a little bit, and sometimes if I'm not careful, it can break some of the paper embellishments I put on my pages. So I'm trying to go very slowly and just apply a little bit of adhesive at a time. I could have used some liquid adhesive, but I wasn't 100% sure and ready to commit to the placement of that title, so I used the ATG adhesive for now. I felt like that purple frame was really pretty, but I wanted to break it up a little bit. So I decided to go back in with some strips of pattern paper and add those to the frame and divide it into a few sections. These thin strips that I'm putting on now, these measure about 1/4 of an inch. And I'm going to put the strips of paper on all 4 sides of the frame. I didn't really formally measure, so I had to go back and trim each of these strips a little bit before they were just the right size. I'm still trying to use that dragonfly to cover up that little white tear that I have there, but I this time moved it outside of the frame, but again, I'm going to remove that in a little while. So I liked the way those strips of paper looked, so I thought I should add a few more strips of paper a little bit closer to the photo. So I cut some really, really thin strips of paper. These are about 1/8 of an inch wide, and I liked the way these looked a little delicate and once again broke up the frame a little bit into some different parts. And then once I had all of those strips of paper in place, I added some pearls to the corners just as a little finishing touch. I have smaller pearls on the thinner strips and larger pearls on the thicker strips. And then I added some pearls to the top and bottom and the sides of that small silver frame, and then a couple of really tiny pearls to those sentiments on the bottom left. And to add a little bit of variety, I put the pearls in different places on each of the sentiments. One pearl's in the center of the two words, and then on one sentiment there are pearls on either side, and another one has two in the lower right hand corner. I think that just switching up just a little bit where the pearls are placed on the sentiments makes the sentiments look a little bit more interesting. It's just a little tiny detail, but I do think that all those little details make a difference in the layout when you consider them all together. So now I'm doing something that I don't know if I've ever done before. On this layout, I'm not using any of the actual dimensional flowers. I'm just using the buds that were in the packs. And I thought that they added a nice little detail on this large purple frame. So I went ahead and I tucked those underneath some of the embellishments that were already on the layout in 3 different areas. I'm adding this tiny dragonfly to the word dreamer. I love adding embellishments to the title. I especially like to add embellishments that are on the rest of the layout because I feel that it helps to make the whole layout look cohesive when the title has elements that are on the rest of the page. I pulled up some of the strips of paper that were on the frame, not because I didn't like them, but because I was thinking that the frame would look even better if I used this punched out border. This is an American Crafts knockout punch. You could see it off to the right. I've had this punch in my stash for a very long time, but I really like this particular punch. I like lots of punches, but I really like this one because it's so delicate. So I punched out 4 strips of it. I used some of the packaging that was in the kit, and I'm positioning them in the same areas where those other strips were before. And now I'm going to go back and layer those strips on top of the punched out border. And I think this just adds a really nice extra little detail to the frame. So then I had to put some elements back in place. I put the strips back in place. I put the pearls back in the corners, and then I took those buds that I had taken off in order to get this done, and I placed them back where they went on the layout, and I moved the dragonfly to the letter A on the title. To attach things down to the layout, things like flowers and buds, I like to use Liquitex Heavy Matte Gel Medium. I think it's a great adhesive. It's very strong, and it can hold things like this down to the layouts. So of course, in my typical fashion, I had to go back in with the stencil and add some flowers in a few more places. I sometimes will complete a whole page and then I'll find some spots that just need a little bit more attention. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm going back in with that stencil and the gesso again, and I'm adding just a few more little flowers in a couple of places. Although I would love to get all of the mixed media done before I put all the elements on the page, sometimes I guess it just can't be helped. You can't really tell how the layout is going to look until everything's down there and positioned on the page. I found I had one more branch, and I think that it fit perfectly in that cluster on the lower right hand side. I added that to the layout, and the layout is complete, and here are some close-ups. Thank you so much for watching, everybody, and thank you for sticking with me till the very end. I hope that you enjoyed the video. In the description box, you'll find a link to the My Creative Scrapbook website where you could check out all of their beautiful kits. You can purchase a subscription there if you would like. I also love to recommend the Instagram page because there are so many beautiful layouts to be inspired by there. I hope you have a fantastic day, and I'll be back very soon with another video. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.